Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Sunday, October 26th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. Expect a pleasant high of 74.8 degrees in Riverside today, with a low dipping to 55.7 degrees, making for a comfortable autumn day outdoors. Coming up, we'll examine why President Trump is issuing tariff warnings tied to an Ontario ad campaign honoring Ronald Reagan, and break down the severe flood risks Hurricane Melissa is posing for Jamaica and Haiti as it barrels through the region. Plus, other key stories on global tensions, local impacts, and more. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. Our first story this morning dives into escalating trade tensions between the United States and Canada, sparked by a clever but controversial ad from Ontario. Joining me now in the studio to break it all down is our trade policy expert, Ethan. Ethan, what exactly happened with this advertisement that has President Trump so fired up?
Thanks, Grace. It all stems from a 30-second spot produced by the Ontario government, which aired during the first game of the World Series on Friday evening, October 24th, between the Los Angeles Dodgers and New York Yankees. The ad pulled quotes from a 1987 radio address by Ronald Reagan, the Republican icon, to argue against tariffs and protectionism. Reagan warned in that speech that trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer, and that high tariffs could spark fierce trade wars, shrinking markets, collapsing businesses, and costing millions of jobs. The ad cleverly juxtaposed those words with visuals of disrupted supply chains and skyrocketing prices for U.S. consumers, linking them implicitly to President Trump's current tariff policies. It was a bold move, using Reagan's own voice to poke at the president's America First agenda.
Bold indeed, but it sounds like it crossed a line for Trump. How did he respond? And why did he call it a fraud?
President Trump wasted no time, calling the ad a fraud, a hostile act, and a serious misrepresentation of the facts in a Truth Social post while flying on Air Force One from Qatar to Malaysia for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit. He accused Ontario of delaying its removal to maximize impact and claimed they timed it to sway upcoming U.S. Supreme Court arguments on presidential tariff authority. Interestingly, Trump asserted that Reagan loved tariffs for national security, but according to reporting from PBS NewsHour via Associated Press on October 25th, Reagan actually viewed broad tariffs as short-term fixes that ultimately harmed U.S. interests, though he supported targeted ones like on Japanese semiconductors. The Associated Press, syndicated in outlets like WISN 12 News and the Chicago Tribune on October 25th, noted the ad's quotes were verbatim but rearranged for emphasis, which the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute slammed as misleading by omitting context on Reagan's nuanced enforcement actions. Fact-checkers at PolitiFact and Newsweek, as covered in AP stories, confirmed the excerpts were accurate, undermining Trump's fake label.
Talk about a tariff icy twist, using Reagan's words against him. What's the latest on those tariffs Trump is threatening?
Trump announced an additional 10% tariff on Canadian imports as retaliation, escalating from his October 25th declaration that all U.S.-Canada trade negotiations are terminated. As of today, October 26th, no official documents from the White House, Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, or others have implemented it, leaving details like effective date and scope unclear. Experts cited in The Guardian on October 26th warn it could violate the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, which Trump negotiated in his first term but now calls insufficient. For context, the USMCA sets zero tariffs on qualifying goods under rules of origin, with 38 to 50% of Canadian exports benefiting, per the U.S. Trade Representative. Canada's economy relies heavily on us, sending over 75% of its goods here, with nearly 3.6 billion Canadian dollars, about 2.7 billion U.S. dollars, crossing the border daily.
That's a huge economic tie. How has Canada reacted? And what's this mean for broader trade?
Ontario Premier Doug Ford pledged to pull the ad immediately after backlash, but delayed until after the weekend for peak U.S. audiences, confirming its suspension effective tomorrow, October 27th, after talks with Prime Minister Mark Carney. Ford defended it on CTV News today as raising awareness but regrets the escalation, prioritizing border ties. Carney, in office since March 2025, stated on October 25th that Canada is ready to resume talks, and from Kuala Lumpur, reaffirmed a rules-based trading system during the ASEAN summit, which runs through October 28th. Trump, at the same event pushing rare earth deals, told reporters per Al Jazeera and Channel News Asia today he has no intention of meeting Carney. Canada's retaliatory tariffs on $30 billion of imports could lift for USMCA-compliant goods if talks progress. Broader frictions traced to Trump's earlier 2025 use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose 25% tariffs on most Canadian imports from August 1st, 50% on steel and aluminum, and 10% on energy, with Canada countering in kind. Legal challenges loom in the Supreme Court case, Trump versus VOS Selections and others, with oral arguments the week of November 3rd, just 8 days away, questioning IEEPA powers, as highlighted by PBS NewsHour and CBS News.
And the ripple effects.
Impacts hit supply chains hard, with Canadian tourism to the U.S. plummeting per The Guardian and Economic Times via AP, and states like New Hampshire, Canada's top U.S. trading partner with hundreds of millions annually, pushing programs like the Export Accelerator to maintain bonds, as WISN 12 News reported. At ASEAN, Carney pitches Canada as a stable alternative to U.S. protectionism, per India Today and The Hindu today. CBC.ca and Global News note the irony of Trump invoking Reagan, whose free trade ethos the ad weaponized, crystallizing protectionism debates. Talks are frozen, the new tariff in limbo, and the court could decide Trump's strategy.
A real trade war of words. Thanks for unpacking this complex story, Ethan. We'll have our second story right after the break. Good morning, everyone. As we wrap up our top stories this morning, we turn to the brewing crisis in the Caribbean, where Hurricane Melissa has exploded into a Category 4 monster, packing winds up to 140 miles per hour and threatening catastrophic flooding for Jamaica and Haiti. Joining me now from the studio to break it all down is our meteorology expert, Chloe. Chloe, this storm sounds like it's spinning up quite the whirlwind of worry. What's the latest from the National Hurricane Center?
Absolutely, Grace, and you're right. Melissa is no lightweight. It's the 13th named storm of this hyperactive 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, which runs from June 1st through November 30th. According to the National Hurricane Center in Miami, as reported by CBS News and the New York Post, the storm's core is about 120 miles south-southeast of Kingston, Jamaica, and 280 miles south-southwest of Guantanamo, Cuba as of early this morning. It's crawling westward at just 3 to 5 miles per hour, which is like a slow poke in hurricane terms, allowing it to dump rain for days and amp up the flood risks.
That slow speed is troubling. For folks unfamiliar, can you explain what Category 4 means and why it might climb even higher?
Sure, Grace. Category 4 on the Saffir-Simpson scale means sustained winds of 130 to 156 miles per hour, capable of devastating entire communities with flying debris and structural failures. The NHC's advisories from 5 a.m., 8 a.m., and 1 p.m. Eastern Time today confirm Melissa's 140 mile per hour winds, with hurricane force gusts extending 25 miles from the eye and tropical storm force out to 175 miles. NOAA satellite images from last night, featured in CBS News coverage, show this rapid intensification from Category 3 just yesterday. Forecasters say it could hit Category 5 over 157 miles per hour by tomorrow, making it the season's fourth major hurricane and potentially the strongest to eye Jamaica since Gilbert in 1988.
Gilbert was a beast, wasn't it? Walk us through the forecast path and timing. Since it's October 26th today, how soon until it strikes?
Spot on, Grace. The NHC's latest track, those spaghetti maps you see on CBS News and Al Jazeera, shows Melissa holding major strength as it nears Jamaica's south coast late tomorrow, Monday, October 27th, or early Tuesday the 28th, that's just 1 to 2 days away. It'll likely brush or hit the island through Tuesday, cross southeastern Cuba by Tuesday night, hit the southeastern Bahamas by midweek, then speed northeast toward Bermuda by Friday. CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Andrew Kozak warns of up to nearly 3 feet of rain, worsened by Jamaica's mountains forcing moist air upward, sparking mudslides that could dwarf Gilbert's devastation, which killed 45 and wrecked over $700 million worth of infrastructure equivalent to half of Jamaica's economy back then.
And the impacts sound life-threatening, especially the flooding. What are experts saying about rainfall and surges?
The big kicker here isn't just the winds, Grace, it's the deluge. NHC key messages, cited by the Washington Post and Al Jazeera, predict 15 to 30 inches of rain across Jamaica, southern Haiti, and the Dominican Republic through Wednesday, with isolated spots in the mountains hitting 40 inches that's a foot deep in some places. Haiti's Tiburon Peninsula could see 30 to 35 inches, per the New York Post. Storm surges of 9 to 13 feet along Jamaica's south coast, plus monster waves, as Reuters photos in the New York Post show, already battering Port Royal seawalls. In Haiti, at least 3 deaths and 5 injuries from early flooding, a collapsed wall, and a destroyed bridge in Saint Suzanne, according to Haitian Civil Protection Director Ronald Delis via the Associated Press. The Dominican Republic reports 1 death, 1 missing, nearly 200 damaged homes, and over 500,000 without water, with Al Jazeera showing flooded Santo Domingo streets from October 24th.
Heartbreaking already, and preparations are ramping up. Any details on warnings and evacuations?
Yes, Grace, urgency is key. Jamaica's under full hurricane warning, with Prime Minister Andrew Holness urging folks to, quote, take the threat seriously, end quote, as told to the New York Post and Al Jazeera. Over 650 shelters open, food stockpiled, and Kingston Airport shut since 8 p.m. last night. Haiti's got a hurricane watch from the border to Port-au-Prince. Cuba watches 4 eastern provinces, and the U.S. naval station at Guantanamo is evacuating non-essentials by Sunday morning, 1 40-pound bag each, per their social media and CBS News. The Bahamas and Turks and Caicos brace for midweek hits, with no U.S. mainland worries. NHC probabilities put near 100% chance of hurricane-force winds in Jamaica, 70 to 80% in eastern Cuba.
Terrifying forecast, Chloe. Thanks for painting such a clear picture of this storm that's truly raining down trouble on the region.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. In Caracas, President Nicolas Maduro charged that Washington is fabricating a new eternal war as the USS Gerald R. Ford cruises the Caribbean, making waves. His government moved to strip opposition figure Leopoldo Lopez of citizenship, with Vice President Delcy Rodriguez saying the Supreme Court has been asked to cancel his nationality and passport over an illegal call for a military invasion. Lopez, exiled in Spain, pushed back online, arguing Venezuela's constitution bars revoking the nationality of those born in the country. The clash adds fresh fuel to heated ties as the U.S. steps up maritime muscle and touts strikes on vessels it says were tied to drug trafficking, turning a war of words into words about warships. At the ballot boxes in Argentina, voters are casting judgment on President Javier Milei's shock therapy agenda in midterms that could jolt the political power grid. Half of the 257-seat lower house and a third of the 72-seat Senate are at stake. Milei's La Libertad Avanza, holding under 15% of seats, seeks to supercharge its share to drive privatizations and tax overhauls past a roadblocked Congress. Markets are watching. A strong showing could grease the gears for reform, while a stumble might send confidence south. The United States is watching, with recent aid and signals from President Trump that future support may hinge on the outcome, turning votes into notes. A different kind of withdrawal in Turkey's war, the PKK says it's pulling all fighters from Turkey to bases in northern Iraq, a peacemaking move from a group at war for 4 decades. Senior figure Sabri OK, citing jailed leader Abdullah Öcalan's approval, said the step aims to prevent clashes or provocations and urged Ankara to answer with legal and political reforms that could translate insurgency into ballot box politics. The pullback follows a February 2025 call by Öcalan for dissolution, a March ceasefire, a May Congress voting to end arms struggle, and a July ceremony to destroy weapons, a calendar of disarmament. President Erdogan's party called it a concrete result of a terror-free Turkey roadmap, as timelines remain hazy. Closer to home in New York City, early voting is off to the races. 80,000 New Yorkers turned out on day one of a 9-day sprint, running through Sunday, November 2nd, ahead of Election Day, Tuesday, November 4th. On the marquee, Democrat Zohran Mamdani, Republican Curtis Sliwa, and Independent Andrew Cuomo. With affordability, crime, and housing on the front stoop, the contest doubles as a stress test for progressive priorities versus establishment gravitas, a 5-borough tug-of-war. And in Kansas, a nod from the top, President Trump praised Secretary of State Scott Schwab for tapping the federal SAVE database to vet the citizenship of registered voters, a tool made free to states under a March executive order. Backers frame the move as list hygiene for democracy's roles, civic flossing to bolster confidence. For Schwab, a 2026 Republican gubernatorial hopeful, the shout-out could prove a ballot booster. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.